class?
I think she was.
That name
I
sounds
don't remember.
familiar.
Yeah.
I believe
It takes me a little while to connect names with faces.
Let me see if I can.
Considering I missed the first
Blackboard.
class last semester and I only ever saw anyone during the presentations.
Right.
Oh, so you
right.
didn't see me at that's the only one I went to, was the first one.
Yeah, so,
I did some of the,
but it sounds
Homework,
familiar. I
and I
think
was
it
like-
was somebody by that name.
I think so. I'm gonna look and
Okay.
see if I can.
I think so.
So, yeah, I kind of feel like it's weird to just call like, here's the official start to class, because we've kind of been easing into it. But this is EDT 530, and I am, you can call me David or Professor. I am not a doctor, so I'm only Professor if you want to get official, but if you call me David, that's fine too. So this class, thank you, sir. This is the online instruction piece of the program. It is very meta in a way, because we are going to be learning about how to design and deliver online instruction. And for the most part, we are going to be doing that learning online. So tonight is somewhat unusual in that we are meeting here on campus. There will be currently scheduled, I think there are 3 other times where I plan for us to meet here on campus. One of them is going to be our very last class meeting, because I like to see everybody at the end to bring some face-to-face closure to things. And then there's a couple of points in the middle that are going to be good, important moments to kind of be all together in the same room at the same time. One of the main projects you're going to be working on here, sort of the main project, is creating your own Moodle. So if you've used, I don't know if other classes you've taken, if you've used the Moodle platform here, but it's a way of organizing and delivering online instruction. So you will be creating your own Moodle. And so there will be a week where we beta test those Moodles. So that'll be one of the weeks where we're all together, because people are going to come around and try yours out and give you feedback. And so that'll be important to be here in person. And I think there's one other week I've scheduled. So that's kind of the main focus of this class. But before we get into that, we will take a look at the syllabus and all that stuff that everyone does on the first days of classes. But let me first of all talk a little bit about myself, because as is apparent, many of you already kind of know each other from previous classes. So I'm the new element here. And then I do want to go around and get a chance to know a little bit about you guys as well, in addition to dogs and living in Burlington and things like that. So the long and short of my particular story is that in terms of this program, I am actually a graduate of this program. I completed my master's in ed tech, I think it was 2009. It's far enough back now that I kind of don't remember exactly what year it was, but I'm pretty sure it was 2009. And then a couple years later, kind of came back into the program as an adjunct. And then I went away for a few years. And then starting about a year ago, actually exactly a year ago, Dr. Abed asked me to come back. I don't know if any of you were here long enough to know Dr. Sponder, but I sort of came in to cover much of the coursework that he used to do in the master's program. So thing number one is that in terms of where you are right now, I've been where you are right now. So I feel your pain. Not pain. I sympathize. I've been there. I've been through the Photoshop class with Dr. Abed. I've kind of gone through all of those experiences and the big capstone project and everything else. So that's thing number one. Thing number two is, in addition to being adjunct here, I am a full-time public school teacher. I teach music in Region School District number 10, which is Burlington and Harwinton. Lewis Mills is the high school. I am now in my 21st year in Region 10. So that is sort of my main day job, is teaching there. And over my 20 years there, I've taught every grade level except for 5th grade. I'm not sure how I skipped 5th grade, but somehow I missed 5th grade. So I've had kind of the range of experiences there in terms of dealing with very, very young kids and up through high school kids and so on. So that's sort of a second piece of my life. And if that wasn't enough, I also am currently a student at Central. I'm doing a postmaster's program. It's not actually a degree, but it's a sort of a design your own coursework program, 30 credit program in music education. So I'm in the process of completing that, and I've got about one more year to go on that, and that's going to give me my department chair certification for the state. I started the 092 for any of you that have looked at that route, and for me, it was just not the right fit. And my district, at least at the moment, does not require 092s for department chair level, and I don't see myself ever being interested in going beyond that. Because I love being in the classroom too much, and becoming a full-time administrator would not be fun for me. So we're going to talk some tonight about meeting times and things like that, and just understand sort of the point of all of this is that I definitely know what it's like to have a full schedule, and I am very flexible when it comes to these things. Maybe too flexible sometimes, but in terms of like getting things in on time, I'm always very willing to work with people about if they need extra week or weeks to get something done. In my own classrooms at the high school, I'm very much a sort of a standards-based growth mindset kind of teacher. So for me, it's more important that just the student eventually shows me that they can do the thing that they need to show me, not necessarily that, well, you couldn't do it on June 2nd, so that's it, you're done. So I try to be extremely flexible along those lines. Yeah, and then beyond this class, obviously I teach the class tomorrow night, which is the gaming class, which I believe all of you are in. And I also then in other semesters, I teach another class that's an elective in the Ed Leadership program, where they have to get a little technology piece into their program, and have done some other things over the years as well through the program. So that's just a little bit about me. And I am a performing musician as well. I've been a musician since I was 4 years old, and so on. So I do that also. But last couple of years, I took a little bit of a break from performing a lot out, but I still consider myself to be a musician. The main thing I teach in my high school is a rock ensemble program, which I'm very proud of because there are very few schools in the state that offer curricular rock ensemble.
And they had their
We do.
performance 2 weeks ago, and it was amazing.
Yeah,
What do you play specifically?
on that side of on that spectrum of things.
Like the
yeah,
instrument?
and you're musician out.
So, well, I have a weird history. My first instrument was violin. That's what I started when I was 4. When I went to college, I auditioned on violin and French horn at the schools I went to, and ended up being a French horn major. And more recently, for about the last decade and a half, I've been a mandolin, pretty sort of serious mandolin player. Not bluegrass mandolin though, like jazz, contemporary rock, classical. But in the rock world, I'm mainly a bass player. So I'm kind of all over the map, and it goes beyond that. In college, I got way into Renaissance music, so I was learning a lot of Renaissance instruments. I'm a very, I know I said in my email, bring your growth mindset, and that's as corny as that sounds, and I know that's kind of become a catchphrase now, but for me, I'm 50 now, and I'm still voluntarily going to school to take classes. So I've always enjoyed learning new things, and that applies to music too. The weirder the instrument, the more I want to learn how to play it. So, all right. So enough about me though, because who really cares? Sort of really quickly, and again, I know you guys mostly know each other already, and I've been hearing bits and pieces, but maybe let's just do a quick round the room of, who you are, maybe where you are in the program. I know we have some people who are near the beginning of the program, and maybe some people who are further along. Where you teach, or I know some of you aren't in traditional teaching roles right now, so maybe sort of what your connection is to the educational world. And yeah, I mean, maybe if you've got a weird fact you'd like to share about yourself or something along those lines. You don't have to. Some people don't like sharing weird facts about themselves because then people go, oh, that's the person who, and you become identified solely by that thing. But yeah, why don't we just kind of quickly go around when we start. I'll go counterclockwise. Usually I go clockwise. So we'll start on this side and work our way around.
So my name's Mike. What were some of the questions?
Oh, you know, where you are in the program,
Where
what you
so
do for a day
I've taken one
job.
class so far, which was the one last semester. I work at Eastern Connecticut State University. I'm in charge of the Center for Instructional Technology, where we do all the academic technology for Eastern. So I don't traditionally teach students stuff. I teach faculty how to use technology. Only I don't have a degree in it. I have an English degree. So I got into IT through working in magazine industry after being an editor and learning the digital tools in the 90s to do digital publication, and it just snowballed from there. And I found myself working in IT and doing academic technology, and so it occurred to me to pursue some official degree in that capacity. So here I am.
Maybe I have to have you teach that class.
I don't need any extra work, thanks.
Yeah, okay.
This is good. I'll do this.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike.
My name's Kristen. I work at Henry Abbott Tech in Danbury. It's a technical high school, trade school, and I teach culinary.
Oh,
Actually,
so she's in charge of
That-
snacks.
Yeah. That is at our school. That is the most popular class in the entire school. We have a very good culinary teacher at our school, and that's the only course in the whole school that has like a waiting list to get into. So
We have 3 culinary instructors, and I am technically the baking instructor. So I went to culinary school. I also have my bachelor's in graphic design. So I feel like they kind of go together. A lot of people are like, that makes no sense. This is my very first class here. Well, in this program, I've taken a bunch of other classes here as a non-matriculated student to fulfill requirements for my first certification thing. I don't have a traditional teaching certificate. I have the trade teaching certificate. So, yeah,
all
that's
right,
me.
awesome.
Hi, I'm Zhi Cui. I am an international student and also a full-time student. Come from China. I don't have any teaching experience. The reason why I choose this major because I want to be a teacher in the future after I graduate, and I also want to learn more the technology skills to make the class fun and the technology. I hope it will help me to catch students' attention and make it more fun, and they will pay more attention.
Okay, awesome. Welcome. Just say your name one more time, just so that.
Zhi Cui.
Ju Sui.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. I'm Taylor Mango. I teach for Farmington Public Schools. I'm a technology coordinator at Westwoods Upper Elementary School. And I've been there just about 25 years. Prior to that, I worked for Travelers in their IT department. And as my kids got a little bit older, I decided I really needed to be home more. So they gave me a telecommuting position, which I did for a number of years. And then when Primerica came in, which was quite a while ago now, I opted not to go into Hartford. They wanted me to come back into the main office, so I opted out of that. And I actually have been teaching part-time down at Tunxus as well for a very long time in computer science. So I'm not doing that this semester. I did that. I took 2 courses last semester here, and I taught at Tunxus, and I worked full-time. And I thought I was going to lose it. So I'm taking a break from Tunxus. So actually my job entails technology support for the building, but also I support the teachers in their instruction, and I also do student instruction as well. So.
All right.
in my bathroom.
We've got a couple of tech people in here. I better be on my game this time around.
I'm Christine Danini. This is the Farmington contingent. We all plan. Well, I didn't
No,
plan
we
it with
didn't even
these
know.
two.
Yeah, we didn't know
So
initially.
there we go. So I teach 8th grade math at Irving A. Robbins. I've been in Farmington for 6 years, I would say. I have taught every single math class from 7th grade basic math up through Calc 3 when I was getting my master's. I worked at WPI. Like when you talk about the non-traditional challenging yourself, like I've taught at middle school, I've taught at high school, I taught at college, I've taught on an island. Like I've been.
Here's her interesting fact. She's the island girl.
Okay.
Island
good to
girl.
me.
Which island? It wasn't Rikers,
Oh.
right?
No, that would have been far more interesting. No, I lived on Nantucket. That was
Oh,
back
okay.
in
Oh, wow.
like 95, 96. I only lasted there 2 years because well at the time when I graduated I had a degree in math and a degree in teaching, but the state of Massachusetts had worked it so that within 5 years of graduating, or I should say within 5 years of teaching, you had to have your master's.
Yeah.
And in 95, there was not a lot of online courses, and Nantucket was great in that they threw people out, but there were 3 math teachers and a whole bunch more elementary school or middle school teachers, like the K to 6. So a lot of their master's programs they had were in elementary type things, which I was like, I mean, granted it would have been free, but at the time, like, I give it up to all my elementary school peeps. I could not, my roommate, she was a kindergarten teacher, she'd come home talking about Johnny having an accident, needing to clean himself up, and this one biting the other one, and I'm like, yeah, no, give me my high school years. I am like all over that. So, and the one thing I said I would never do was teach middle school, and it was a part-time job, and I was like, I'll try it for a year. My husband's like, what's the worst that'll happen? You can quit, and
There you are.
there I am. So there you go. And I am I have 2 classes under my belt, so you're not that like 1, 2, 0. There you go. We're all at the beginning stages. I think Jasui is the only one who has taken more classes, right?
I'm taking 4 classes this semester.
Oh, yo.
Oh, yeah.
Full time.
The advantage of being a full-time,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
So she's the experienced one.
right.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right.
I'm Jill Slayton. I teach in Farmington with Taylor at the 5-6 school. I've been teaching, this is my 30th year. Before that I taught in Weston and Wilton, 3rd and 4th grade, and then I moved back to where I grew up, and so I've been in Farmington for 20 years. Just teaching 5th grade. And just have been interested in, haven't gone back to school because I have kids. They've been gone a long time, and it should have occurred to me earlier to do this, but it didn't. So she started talking about it, and I was like, oh, that sounds good, because I tend to work well with Taylor and do a lot of technology stuff. So,
True.
yeah. So I decided to do this, and came in and met with Abed, and he told me about it. I think it's good. I don't know if I have a fact other than I have 2 puppies at home. I should be a puppy person because I'm not a dog person apparently, but I do love them.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, you're
I also have kids and grandkids. A new that's what I
Wow.
should be saying, but I'm
Yeah.
talking about the puppies because they're
Of
my
course,
dogs.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
I do.
your dogs will always look like little puppies, so I
They
think
will.
that'll be fine.
they will. Yeah. So.
Yeah. When they become big puppies, then
Mhm.
and they take up the whole bed. But
Henry couldn't
yeah,
even jump on the bed.
I have one daughter who's 13,
Oh.
and she will be coming up to my school next year. She's in 8th grade this year. So that will be an interesting experience for me. I will have her sort of in classes because she'll be in chorus, and I do a pull-out lesson program with all the ensemble students, so I'll have her in that context. But it will be weird suddenly having all these kids who I've known because they're her friends for.
They've been at sleepovers at your house.
Oh yeah.
I did that too
Yeah.
with my kids. So like this little kid's in my class and he's running around my house in his boxer shorts.
Yeah, yeah. So it'll be a fun year next year, but
Yeah.
you know, she's 13 going on 27 as they do. Yes. So all right. Well, so one of the challenges of online learning is making connections with people. And that's something that is acknowledged. And in fact, just before class, we were having a discussion with Dr. Bed and another faculty member sort of about that very topic about, you know, yeah, it's an online class, but we still feel like we need to be here on campus to at least see each other, because that's where a lot of these connections are made. And since it's going to be a little strange in this class, because I will be seeing all of you every week in person, not in the context of this class, but in the other class. So, so one thing I like to do, and I know we just kind of went around the room, but kind of as a different activity, is same and different. And it's just a little icebreaker kind of thing. And I think we're a small enough group that we can probably just do this as one group. Sometimes I'll break up into smaller groups. So the idea is this. The challenge is this. The first step is going to be to find some things that are the same between the whole group of you. And you know, obviously there's the obvious ones. We all have two eyes. We all have one nose. I think we all have one nose, right? We're looking more for, like, what are some things that might be unexpected? So you're going to have to kind of throw some things out there and say, well, does anybody else? So that's one side. And then the other side of the discussion is different, which is to find at least one thing for each person that is uniquely that person, right? And again, not the obvious, like my last name is such and such. Is your no? Nobody's got the same last name. That's it. But just to kind of try to find find some things that, you know, as we do kind of go our separate ways and are interacting online, help to make some connections maybe to those faces that are just names on a screen and typed words on a screen and so on. So just as a way to find some things that maybe we do all share in common, and some things that you can kind of proudly say, you know, this is uniquely me. All right. So shouldn't take a ton of time. We are a relatively small group. I'm going to stay out of it. So you know, I'll let you transition from the one to the other in terms of how much time you think it'll take. So with the same, let's see if we can find maybe 3 things that all 6 of you can say we all share this in common. And maybe one thing for each person individually that they can say this is uniquely me. All right, does that make sense?
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to, you don't even really need to circle up. I mean, you can all kind of
We're already settled up.
hear each other.
So
and-
we're not all teachers.
No.
We're all students.
That's true.
I don't know. That one seems a little obvious.
starting the
And-
conversation.
We don't all have kids, do we?
Yeah.
I have children.
Okay, you don't,
I don't.
okay.
I was gonna say, well, let's see if everybody was born in the Northeast, but then I was like,
Not me.
no. I was like
Well-
trying to be semi-creative, and I'm like, nope, that's
Well,
not
maybe
here.
northeastern China. I-
Oh, South.
Okay.
Okay, wait, how about can everybody speak a different language?
No.
Like even a word or 2?
Okay,
Yeah.
word.
I could do it. Okay, how many people have traveled outside of, like, has traveled at least one foreign country?
Does Canada count?
Is that's a foreign country?
Okay.
Yes. We all have
Yeah.
foreign country?
Yep.
There you go.
There we
It's
go.
not foreign to us, but it's foreign to you. I like it.
All right, okay,
Alright.
that's one.
Okay.
Anybody have food allergies?
No,
Me and you. We got some
Yeah.
food allergies.
okay.
Mine are weird though. Raw fruits and vegetables.
Wow.
Really?
I eat healthy.
Well, there's only certain ones.
Oh.
It's a long story. It's actually a pollen allergy, but you don't really need to know that.
Makes you unique.
Has people, how about chicken pox? Is it anybody,
I've had it.
everybody have the chicken pox?
Yeah.
Yes.
Chicken pox?
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh,
All
we
right,
got
we got
two.
two.
Chicken
Alright.
pox and we've been to a
That's a
different
good one.
country.
Did everybody actually get them, or
Yes.
okay? So
Yeah.
we're all
Old
Yeah.
enough to receive the
pre-vaccine
Yeah.
generation. Okay.
Yep.
Interesting fact, I had it twice.
Ooh,
Really?
that's
It's very
not
rare.
supposed to happen.
No, it's not.
I can go.
I'm full of craziness today.
Uh-oh, we've got a
I can
one-upmanship.
go one more on that.
All right.
My older son was tested, and they determined he didn't need the vaccine because he was immune. And then when he turned 16, he got chickenpox.
Ooh.
What?
Wow,
Really?
16, that's a rough time.
Miserable.
Mine was
That's a
both
rough
like,
I don't remember how long it lasts, but that
It
16-year-old.
was like a week.
Oh,
It was
Yeah.
miserable for him.
Well, and it gets
Worse.
worse the older you
Right,
are.
'cause
I mean,
yeah, that's what made it so bad for him because he
Yeah.
was already past puberty. And,
wow.
yeah.
Ooh. But he's okay now.
Yeah, he's fine.
That's-
It was a weird, like they tested him and said, no, he's immune. He must have been exposed at some point early on, developed an immunity. He's good.
And then,
Oh.
bam.
That's so weird.
Yeah,
That's something to do
All
with
right.
food.
Anyway, so that's a
Gym
chicken pox
membership.
thing.
Gym membership.
In my life, yes.
how about broken bones? Has everybody broken a bone?
Nope.
I broke a finger, like I wasn't that big, but it's like a
Never mind, I'm not gonna go there.
How about like pizza?
Yep.
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
Pizza?
You like pizza?
Alright, like,
All right, we
there
found
we go,
three.
we got three.
Alright. Now you need.
And this can be the harder one because everyone
Yeah.
thinks, and then you find out.
I studied abroad in Italy.
You're a winner on
Copy
that
there.
one.
You're the winner.
Alright.
I learned how to do the trapeze.
Ooh,
What is that? The
Wow.
trapeze?
Trapeze. Like I'm not
Wow.
really good, but like we were on vacation at a
Wow.
like resort and like you could take trapeze lessons.
Really?
And I was like, I was bored sitting on the beach, so I'm like, sure, why not?
That sounds like one heck of a resort.
It was fine.
Yeah.
Alright, so we got two of us done. All right, yay.
I don't know about skydiving. Anybody?
No.
No.
All right, that'd be fine. I've skydived.
All
Wow.
right, we're halfway down.
Oh.
I
Wow,
snowboard.
Snowboard?
Yeah.
Nope, I'm a skier.
No, I'm scared too.
Yeah, you
All right.
just-
All right, you got
Yeah,
yours.
that'll work.
Snowboarding.
We're done.
Taylor.
Ski.
Ski. Ice skate.
You
I
said
ski.
Everybody.
All right.
Okay. It's hard.
You have a weird hobby or
Something
a
about
hobby
your
that
daughters.
you don't do.
Okay, I used to have a weird hobby, and it was collecting butterflies.
I'd never collect
Hmm.
butterflies. Nope.
I
You
know
got
it's
you on that
weird. My brother
No,
was
but
into it, and he
the
and I used to
pins
do it.
on the thing.
Yeah.
I did that in 8th grade. I loved it. The bugs.
Yeah.
What's there's a name for, is that lepidoptery that's
Somebody who collects
collecting
bugs. Oh, butterflies.
I think it's butterflies. I think it's like
There's a name for you.
lepidoptery.
There you
or something.
go.
When you're into your collection.
Lep-
It kind of deteriorated.
Literally
You mean
or
that literally, okay.
How long do those little, like,
Yeah.
wings last? They kind of crumble after a while.
All right. So what makes you unique?
Can I say I speak Mandarin?
Yeah.
Yes. I speak.
Oh.
Good.
There you
Ni hao.
go.
Ni hao. I know
Ni
one
hao.
word. Ni
Oh,
hao.
no.
I went to China.
Cantonese.
So-
Huh?
Cantonese.
Oh,
that's
okay.
good.
Oh.
I went
Yeah, that's a
to
different language.
China one summer to teach.
Oh,
Up in the mountains
Yeah.
down south.
which city?
Well, I can't remember the name of it. And it meant grass, I think. I don't know. It was green. We were a 16-hour bus ride after the plane. So we were
Wow.
like up in the mountains near Vietnam. Oh,
Oh, Vietnam.
there it starts with L. Very south.
my
No toilets. Like just that.
Yeah.
Not the city.
yeah, my daughter was born in China.
Really?
So she was in Jiangxi
Jiangxi.
Jiangxi province.
Oh, Jiangxi province.
Yeah, Nanchang was
Nanchang, yeah.
Nanchang.
Yeah, one of my friends come from Nanchang.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So Ni Hao
heard-
is not Mandarin.
Ni hao is Mandarin.
Oh, it is.
It's
Okay.
Mandarin. Nei hao is Cantonese.
Okay. I don't know. That's all I know. So I'd be like, Ni Hao, Ni Hao.
Yeah.
And they're all like, why are you waving at me? Why are you being so friendly? We don't do that here.
Yeah, our high school actually teaches Mandarin, has Mandarin, and my daughter's gonna, when she comes up,
That's
that's
awesome.
that's what she wants to learn next year. So,
Yeah.
and I'm correct. A lepidopterist is someone who collects specimens of butterflies and moths.
Oh.
Oh, how
Never
interesting.
knew that.
My mom was an English teacher, so that's
Okay.
probably why weird words like that.
My
Come
roommate
on, so.
freshman year at college she only spoke Mandarin. She did not speak any English. And she moved in the second half of freshman year, and it was very awkward because did not have a lot to communicate with. So
How can she do?
I do not know. But this was, I went to UMass Amherst. It was a very big school, so like I don't know how it was, but it was just awkward. We did a lot of smiling.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, draw pictures.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's ways to make it work, right?
I was
So,
in the Yunnan,
Vietnam?
in that part.
Oh,
Somewhere there.
Yunnan. Okay,
Somewhere there.
that's like it's not a very developed.
No, not developed. Nope.
all right, so just as a way to kind of learn more, you put ideas to names and faces. And that's going to be, I mean, this will be a topic that comes back as we go through this course is as you're developing your Moodles, what are ways that you can incorporate into a Moodle or into an online instruction, ways to make sure those connections are happening. I don't know what your own personal experiences have been in terms of taking online classes. I've kind of had the gamut from the class where once a week the teacher posts something that says, here's what you do for the next week, and that's it. And at the end of the week, you submit it, and then they send out the next one that says, here's what you do next week, all the way up to, I actually worked for Home Depot for a little while because I'm also a carpenter, and they do all of their instruction online. So I spent a lot of time in their workroom on a computer with the headset on, watching so-and-so at the home office teaching us about Windows or about the newest doors or sort of the synchronous. But that personalization is something that instruction needs, I think, to be effective. And it's one of the things that I just want us to keep at the forefront of our brains as we move forward and talk about online instruction is how can we bring those types of things into online instruction. So, all right, so far any questions, comments, concerns, criticisms? I'm open to any of the C's.
Oh, yeah. Like next week, we don't have to come here, right?
That is correct. And in fact, that's a perfect way to segue into thing number 2, which is to talk a little bit about the syllabus. So I'll pull it up here. Oh, by the way, so how many of you have used the campus have used CCSU's Moodle? All right. So I'll go through the syllabus first, and then I'll make sure that everybody knows how to get to Moodle. You only have to sign up for it once, and then once you're in Central Connecticut's system, you're in, and then if any other teachers use Moodle, you can get in there as well. This will also be, the Moodles you'll be creating will be on Central's Moodle server. So you'll be coming here a lot to work on your own Moodles as well as to access the one for the class. So let me just kind of go through this. A lot of this is cookie cutter stuff that I'm sure you've all seen in other things. So obviously the first meeting tonight is at 4:30 here in Carroll Hall 34. That's my email address here at campus. It is linked to most of my devices. I, for some reason, can no longer reach it in my school computer at Region 10 because I think their new filter is keeping me from being able to log into it. But I have plenty of phones and iPads and other things that do connect. So number of ways for you to get in touch with me. That is definitely one of them. On the Moodle itself, after every week, there's a place where if you have a question that you just want to generally post, you can post it there. And we are also going to be signing up for Remind. If any of you are familiar with Remind, I won't use it to flood you with information, but especially this time of year, if we've got a class cancellation because of snow or something comes up at the last minute, that'll be another way. And you can also always use that to text me directly also. And with that, I'll even get it on my watch. So there's many ways, but that's sort of the official way. I am not on campus normally for office hours. But if you need to meet with me either before a class or after a class, just let me know ahead of time. I can usually stay after, no problem, and I can usually get here a little before class starts too if you need to talk to me about anything. So we'll talk about the Moodle in a moment so we can all do that together. This syllabus is on the Moodle already, so you'll have access to all of this. Course materials, there is a text that we're going to draw from called E-Learning and the Science of Instruction. You do not need to go out and get it. I think the current printing is the 4th or 5th edition or something. The 3rd edition is available out there on the web for free as a PDF. And not much has changed in terms of the sections we use. So if we have readings to do from that book, I have them and I can post them. If you want to get the book, that's entirely up to you. It is actually a pretty good sort of comprehensive overview of digital learning, online instruction, and things like that. So software, obviously we're going to use Moodle. Actually, I can take Wix off of there. We're not doing that. Remind, we'll get signed up for that tonight. WebEx is what we use to do our online classes through. Central uses WebEx across the campus to do online instruction. It's simply a portal. There's a link on here. Each week you'll just click on the link and that will take you to WebEx. The first time you go to WebEx, there is a little piece of software that will download to your computer that's just a little client. That way it can run in its own sort of environment instead of trying to run through a web browser, and it's more full featured to run it that way. But once you've done that once, when you click on the class, you'll just have to type in your name and enter the classroom and you'll be there. We'll be talking about Web 2.0 stuff as we go. Zoom. So there are 2 major projects in this class. One of them is the Moodle. The other, which will happen near the end of the course, is that you will each teach a half-hour long class synchronously using Zoom. The reason that I have you use Zoom instead of WebEx is because WebEx is really only available to faculty at the university and Zoom is free. So you can sign up for Zoom for free. You can teach, I think you can use conferencing up to like 40 minutes before you have to pay for it. So it works well for this class and it will give you that experience of being the person sitting in front of the computer having to deliver instruction. And so that'll be another thing that we use as well. And I'll get more into the projects. Course description is what it is. I've kind of already gone over all of that. My core philosophy with a lot of this educational technology, and I'm involved with technology from a lot of different perspectives. I got my first computer the Christmas of my 5th grade year. It was a TRS-80 Model 1, Level 1. Does anybody know what company made TRS-80 computers? They were the first home computer on the market.
It's Radio Shack.
Radio Shack. Today, Radio Shack barely exists as a company, but they were basically the first company with a mass-marketed home computer. That computer had 4K of memory, 4,000 bytes. That's it. Drives didn't exist. No floppy drives, no hard drives. It was a cassette deck. It was a Radio Shack cassette player that you stored your data on. And you could maybe get 1 or 2 good readings of the data back off the cassette before the cassette degraded to the point where you couldn't do it anymore. So you usually were typing your programs in from scratch. So I kind of started very young with the programming side of things. And then currently I do all of the music technology at our school. I'm very heavily involved in audio production and using software from that perspective. And I do programming. I've developed FileMaker databases solutions. I do scripting in Excel and all sorts of things. But my core philosophy is it's sort of a variation of, give a person a fish, feed them for a day, teach a person to fish, feed them for the rest of their lives. is we all know how fast technology changes. And if I focus too much on simply teaching you a specific piece of software, that's going to hold good for the next couple of years until it gets replaced by the next big thing. So a lot of our focus in here is going to be more on the instructional design side of things, where if you can have a good plan in place and think through why you're using the technology and what you're trying to achieve with it, then whatever the specific technology is you're using will do what it needs to do. So, so I kind of say that in here rather than focusing. I mean, yes, we're going to use Moodle. We're going to learn a lot about Moodle, but I'm almost more interested in seeing your design process that then will just express itself through Moodle. But I think that's a more effective and a more future-proof way to approach it than to say, you know, this class is about this piece of software and that's really all we're learning. So that's just a little bit of my philosophy. Course objectives, I mean, you guys can read through a lot of this on your own. So in terms of the grade, there's basically 4 different pieces that your grade will come from. 2 of them are forums, and I call them forums because in Moodle, that's the actual activity. There are some discussion forums, and you probably all know what those are going to be. There will be a reading that then you're responding to, or some question that I'm posing. And the biggest, and we were actually just having a discussion about this too with Dr. Bed right before class, is a lot of people, that's not their favorite thing of online classes. It's like the first person says what they say, and then everyone just kind of piles on and says, oh yeah, that was a good point. I really want us to try to see what we can do to make these as interactive as possible. So with the forums, I'm really looking more for the quality of the back and forth. So if you've been the one that posts a question and somebody responds to you, you should feel like you should respond back to them and kind of keep it going as long as it needs to be. And that's another piece of this making higher quality online instruction. If it's just, here's a question or here's a thought I had, and somebody says, oh yeah, that's great, and then that's the end of it, there's no connection really being made there. But if we can get more back and forth involved. So there will be a number of those, roughly every other week or so, and they will tie into whatever we're discussing at that time. So that'll be one piece. Production forums, those are really more, so in our developing of our Moodle, I'm also going to be covering some basic sort of design concepts. And actually, you said you had graphic design background too, so some of this may be familiar to you also. But if you're not there to talk a student through a confusion they have, if you give a handout out and you're there in class and they have a question, they can come to you and ask, what did you mean by this? If you're designing something that's being delivered online and you're not there to explain what's going on, you need to pay a little more attention to the design of those things that you're creating. So we're going to talk about graphic design. We're going to talk about video design, audio design, and assessment design. So sort of the different types of things you would create on a Moodle. So you might make handouts, you might have an instructional video, or you might have instructional audio, or you need to test the students. So for each of those, it's not really a forum, it's really more, this will be like a mini project of, you know, create a piece of graphic, an instructional graphic for something or something like that. So that'll be another piece. And then it's the 2 main projects, the asynchronous and the synchronous. So the asynchronous is the Moodle, and the synchronous will be that online class that you will teach to the rest of us and that's really like the last 2 of the last 3 weeks of the course will be just those presentations. So we've got plenty of time before we get to those. I know April seems like a long way away. All right. Snow, last year, not this class, the Wednesday night class got hit over and over and over again. For some reason, Wednesdays, Mother Nature just had it out for Wednesdays. Since we are mostly online already, it won't impact us as much unless it happens to be one of the couple weeks where we are coming on campus. But you guys will actually be all set on this because you'll know how to use WebEx. If you're in tomorrow night's class, we have the option of going on to WebEx if we can't make it on campus for a night. And I still want to meet with everybody. Grading, that's just the university's grading scale. You do need to attend classes. I please just ask that you get in touch with me. Again, I know things come up with everybody. And they can be last minute and they can be planned. As long as I know ahead of time, that's kind of the main thing for me. This policy is up here because it's sort of the official policy, but I'm not a stickler about that. So
So if we happen to be away for, this is the first year April vacation has lined up for Lewis Mills and Farmington. So it's
Oh.
the first, so we gave our kids a vacation. So if I had to miss one class, is that gonna be okay?
no, yeah, and actually,
It's
so
been 7 years before
Right.
you Island. We haven't, they haven't picked yet, so like, I don't wanna distract us, but we told them that we could use passports or just go anywhere they want. That was their Christmas present, so.
gotcha. We will.
I'm hoping you won't dock me a hat.
No, it's so. And
Yeah.
and besides, that I know ahead of time. We know ahead of time. We can plan ahead of time. I do, in fact, right this moment, I'm actually recording the screen and everything that's happening in the room. So every class, whether it's an online class or the in-person classes, I do make videos of all of them. So if you do miss a class, I mean, it's not exactly the same as being there, but you can always go back, and I try to post them within a day or two of the class, so you can always get caught up and take the class virtually by kind of listening through it and so on. But we can absolutely work around things like that. Special needs. I mean, a lot of this stuff is stuff that shows up in all of these expectations, blah, blah, blah. Late pass. This is in here because this department, I guess Dr. Bed and Dr. Sponder sort of developed this. Again, I'm not a stickler about this either. It's like, you have this piece of paper you can hand me and say, I want to turn this in late. I already said my philosophy is as long as you can show me before the end of the course that you've completed the material and so on, I'm good. All right. So this is, I always hesitate a bit on doing something like this because it will change almost probably immediately. But I have taught this class for a couple years, so I do have a pretty good sense of the flow of what goes on. And this at least gives you a little bit of a heads up on some key things. So this is the course laid out as I currently envision it happening. Obviously, this first week we're meeting in campus. We're embracing our growth mindset and doing all those sorts of fun things. So what I do, to be clear, is this is what we are focusing on that week in class. This is what is due that week. I know sometimes people will put the stuff here that's due the following week, but this is the week that it's due. So this forum number 1 we'll talk about tonight, but it's not due until next week. So I tried to be clear about this. And the asterisk at the bottom simply says, always look at the Moodle first. The last section of every week's Moodle will be next week's homework. So if I have to make any adjustments to this, or I always forget that's a touchscreen, or things change, don't take this as gospel. Like, always look at the Moodle. That will be the most current and the accurate thing. So kind of what happens is the first half of this course up until about spring break is we are going to be covering a lot of ground relatively quickly. But then it's going to transition the second half of the course into a lot more sort of lab time, just working on projects, working on presentations. So don't panic if this looks like a lot. And again, I'm always willing to make adjustments as we go. But basically, starting next week, we're going to talk about instructional design in general, but then already talk about our first steps into Moodle, and we'll just look at setting up a Moodle. And then we'll be looking the following week at Moodle's activities and resources. Those are the things that you can put into a Moodle. Then I'll be talking about the actual project and kind of making sure everyone knows what needs to be in it. And we get into graphics this week, video and animation, audio. Web 2.0 is in there too. I forgot about that. And then assessment. So kind of each week we'll be hitting one of the types of things that will go into your Moodle. And typically what happens is, like this week we will talk about graphics and practice it. And then the following week is one of those production forums where you will have done something that relates to graphics. And then we have video, and there's an instructional video the week later. So I kind of try to stagger things that way. So we get a week to talk about stuff and work on it together. And then the following week you've produced something that demonstrates that. I guess the most important thing is to point out where the classes alter. So week 6, February 25th, there will be no class online or offline that week. I also, in my many hats, I also manage the performing arts facility at our high school, the auditorium. And that week happens to be production week for the spring musical, which I don't conduct, but I do the lighting and sound and everything for that. So I'm not available that week. So that'll be a week there will be an activity for you to do, but you don't have to do it the night of the class. That'll be an asynchronous thing that you can do kind of at your own leisure whenever. And
But
also
the other ones you've been mentioning, we do on Tuesdays.
yes.
Just not from here.
Yeah, just from wherever
Okay.
you
I
happen
got
to
you.
be.
Okay.
I have literally taken an online class in the control booth of a theater while I was running a show. So I'm pushing the go button over here, and I've got the headphones on, and I'm watching the class here. So, all right, so that's that week. This week 8, the week right before Central's spring break, is going to be a meet on campus. And that is for the purposes mainly of what I call alpha testing your Moodles. So that's not, the expectation is not at that point that you've got a Moodle to show somebody. Alpha testing is going to be more discussion. You'll be sitting down with somebody and just kind of talking through what topic you've chosen, how you're going to be breaking the information up, that sort of stuff, just to bounce some ideas off of people. So that'll be 1 week that we're on campus. We've got spring break. And then the beta testing week happens about a month later on April 7th. And that'll be the next on campus. At that point, your Moodle doesn't need to be done, but it should be far enough along that people can actually at that point look at it. Be another chance for you to get some immediate feedback as you head into finishing that up. And then, I mean, you can already see like the amount of stuff we do from week to week gets a lot more open when we hit the second half of the course. A couple of classes near the end are when we're going to do those online presentations, and those will be scheduled ahead of time, so you'll know what day and what time you have to present. And then the other week, with sort of your indulgence, is technically the last week of classes at Central is that May 5th. But that's another week where I've got, our Spring Choral Festival concerts are that night. So what I've done, and we've done this in the past, since there is no final exam for this course, this May 12th is technically Central's exam week, but we'll just meet as a normal class meeting. That one, what I did last year is we were able to combine this meeting with the other classes' final meeting, because there's not much in both classes that take up a whole 2 hours. So we kind of met, I forget which night we did, but we kind of, everybody came in all at once to finish up.
No, that's the vacation week.
So,
Yeah.
so that's the overview of
Oh, yeah, yeah.
things.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
You freaked me out for a second because I thought you said it was April 7th. No. And that's why I was like, that better not be our
No,
vacation.
that's why I
day.
just asked.
No, April 14th is our vacation.
Yes, okay, great,
Yeah.
thank you. For a second, I
Okay.
thought you were talking about when they were
The one
beta
time, yeah.
testing. I was like, if that's really our vacation, then I really messed up my kids because their vacation.
Yeah.
we'll figure it all out. We'll figure it all out.
Okay.
So while we're kind of thinking about that, I think now is the time to sort of officially discuss the following. So Central as a policy, it looks down upon any individual professor taking the assigned time and meeting of their course and changing it. With that said, Dr. Abed and those of us in the department have a sort of long-standing policy of just changing it anyway and just not telling people. I mean, the main thing is a 4:30 meeting time is historically has been problematic for a number of people. As we saw, the parking issue alone on campus at 4:30 is not worth the price of admission right off the bat. It took me by surprise too. I'm used to the last classes I've taught have met at 7:30 at night, and by then the parking lot's half empty and nobody's around and it's easy. So that's sort of one issue, is 4:30 seems to be generally too early. We do also kind of have this unique thing, and I had somewhat of it last year, but not to this extent, where all of you are also in the Wednesday class. So I want to try to honor everybody's time and their schedules in a way that is as stress-free and is as useful as possible. So, I mean, I don't think we can just throw the schedule out and just sort of start over. However, anything from let's take our meeting time and bump it back a half an hour instead of 4:30 to 7:15, maybe we do 5 to 7:30 and just say we don't need to take a break, so we don't need to do 2 hours and 45 minutes or something like that. We could even go later if that's, I mean, for the online night, I know, for our family, the 5 to 7 o'clock, we usually eat dinner at 6. So that's kind of can be a weird time. Since we are mostly online, we can kind of push that kind of anywhere in the evening that seems like it would be the most useful or the most helpful for people. We'll have this discussion tomorrow night also with that class, the other class. The other one's a little more set. I mean, because we're on campus, we kind of have to be on campus on Wednesdays because that's when the lab is available and so on.
Talking about Wednesday classes on campus all the time?
The Wednesday one is, yes. With the exception, there's 2 or 3 weeks where we're not. But that one is primarily an on-campus class.
At 4:30.
That's its currently scheduled
It was
time.
advertised as a hybrid.
It does.
Yeah, it
it
does
says,
say that.
it
And
says
I'm
most.
not gonna. I mean, I'm
says
gonna have
hy-
to drop that class if that's the case.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't. I mean, it's that's always been the way it's been done. I don't know.
I mean, the
I read it
banner index
somewhere.
says hybrid, and
Okay.
it says in the catalog hybrid. Partially on, partially off, just like all the other hybrid courses.
Gotcha. Okay.
I saw something for one of these two classes, and I didn't know which. It said
Okay.
something like mostly on campus.
I
and was
believe
like,
you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't.
I was under the understanding that one of these was going to be here, so I must have read it somewhere. I don't know where.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't develop the catalog descriptions.
Yeah, I'm sure.
This is how the class is always run, so I don't know. I mean, there are a few weeks within the run of it where we aren't on campus, for various reasons. But that one, because it's largely game development with a group of people in the class, is sort of more heavily like working with people in real time. So, yeah, I mean, I guess my suggestion would be to maybe just talk to Dr.
Okay.
Abed about that, because that's, like I said, I didn't change anything.
Yeah, I'll deal with it. It's just good to know now.
So, but likewise, that course we have usually not started at 4:30 with that one, but push that one later as well. Okay, well that's good to know, and I can sort of follow up on that too. I also don't know what, honestly, sort of what this university's, what sort of dividing line they use in terms of calling something all online or hybrid or
it's like 3 words in the in the online catalog,
Yeah.
and they have the same 3 words anytime it's listed as a hybrid. So
Gotcha.
it gives you the impression that having taken one, maybe my bad, I assume that they would be similar.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that just means that
Oh yeah, I gotcha.
that there
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
it does meet sometimes online, and I don't, like I said, I don't know if the university has an official, but that would be a question for Dr. Abed, because
All right.
he's the one that has direct control over what goes into the
Okay.
course catalogs and
Okay.
things like that. So anyway, so sort of back to this class, you know, and I know we are missing one person, so we don't have his input on this, but what are your guys' thoughts in terms of what would be the least stressful arrangement in terms of sort of what
Time.
time, yeah, like times or
5 o'clock sounds good to me.
okay.
I'm
It's
flexible.
the start time.
I'm flexible for whatever the group decides.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me.
Are you talking about just the times we meet on campus or overall?
No, we're talking about meeting online all at the same time.
Yeah, this would be for any of the class meetings where we are all meeting at the same time, whether
What's
it's
that
online.
called? Because the other class was you could do the work whenever you wanted.
Asynchronous.
That's
Synchronous.
yeah, synchronous.
We're talking about meeting
We're all
online.
online. We were all there at
Yes.
the same
Yes.
time.
Oh,
That's
so
the-
different.
That's the
Okay.
WebEx.
So that was the aha that I just had. I was like,
I
oh,
thought
so
you were talking about
we
meeting
do have classes
here
on
when we're
Tuesday.
here.
Yes,
just
you
that
will
we are
always
wherever
have
we need to
classes.
be.
On Tuesday.
Also, no staffing is for us.
So that's like that's where somebody had told me that this one here, that's why I was surprised that it was synchronous, not asynchronous.
Okay.
And they were on two different nights.
Okay,
Got it.
then 5 o'clock doesn't work.
Okay.
I
5
wouldn't even
o'clock
be
doesn't
home
work?
by then.
Oh.
Unless we get in for during the day. That's cool, but
So 5:30, like what?
I don't know.
I think
what about you?
I'm
You
just
have kids
kinda-
at home.
I was gonna
I'm
say
gonna plan on not being home, otherwise I will not be able to participate.
You have kids at home?
I have a 1 and 2-year-old. So.
Ah.
yeah, I'm
gonna not
nervous
be
about
home.
pushing it too late, like
Because you'll be tired, or the
well too late, tired,
Yeah.
like and if I'm at home doing it, like my kids might be, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like you having to try and find a place where
Right.
I can
be left alone.
log in and be left alone
Mhm.
for that amount of time. That's where, like, you know, if all of a sudden we say, okay, let's start at 6 and it's 2.5 hours, like,
Yeah.
What about
you
you?
know,
I'm good at any of those times. So if what will most likely happen is I'll have to drop the Wednesday class. So if we're just talking about Tuesdays,
And how long of it? So it's
Yeah,
for
how long will
two.
it be online?
Well, it's
How long do we
I
plan
mean,
on
are we
being
gonna be
online?
online the whole time, or?
not necessarily, and I mean it will vary from week to week. Some weeks we kind of meet together, and then I'm setting up an activity which you will either be doing on your own or sometimes in small groups. I mean, part of the way this course is structured is you know, we're trying to learn how to use the Moodle software. So what I try to do from week to week is use the various Moodle activities in our actual class, so that if, you know, one of the things is a Moodle database activity. So one of the weeks, whatever the subject is we're working on, I will have structured something that makes use of the Moodle database. So not only am I just sort of talking about it, but then you have a chance to actually use it.
Experience it as a learner.
Yeah, so you
Okay.
get to use each of the things. That way, when you're thinking about what to incorporate in your own Moodle, you've had firsthand experience of what does this good at doing, and what kinds of things can I do with it, and how does it work from the student's perspective, you know. So depending on the week and depending on the subject and depending on the activity, there are some weeks where we meet a little at the beginning, and then you might be in small group breakouts online, or you might be just working individually on something, and maybe we just come back together at the end to touch base. Or I may just be cutting you loose and saying, here's what we need to do, you can work on it now, or get it finished, you know, when you need to, you know, sometime in the next few days. It's not, you know, every week won't be the same, because it does depend on what the topic is we're covering that week. 'Cause some things do need a little more direct instruction time, and other things I can build out in such a way that you can kind of self-instruct on things.
Well, I take back my 5 o'clock then. I guess I could just stay at work and keep going. So, whatever works.
Yeah, I'm flexible too.
So does that mean 4:30 or 5? What's more comfortable?
I can make either work.
Yeah, if we don't have to drive here, but,
I'd rather do 5.
Yeah.
Only because if I want to drive home, I live a half hour from school. So
What time do you guys have to stay at work until?
4.
4 o'clock.
So if it was 4:30, I might be pushing it to try to get in home.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, give yourself a little breathing time.
Yeah. But I'm more
Okay.
likely to go to your room and stay at school.
And the weeks where we're meeting on campus, we can maybe address those individually as they come up. There is this week, these 2 weeks here, there's potential. I just have no way of projecting this far out, where I was maybe going to have to push those meetings a little later anyway, basically because of something that was finishing up at school afterwards, and just in terms of me getting here by the start time. So those weeks as they come up, we can kind of talk about and see what, because that'll be a different scenario than just getting to a computer and logging in. And I can also, I mean, again, I'm flexible and I don't want this to be stressful for people. So sort of understanding the sort of some of the pre-expectations, I certainly do have some flexibility in terms of organizing the weekly things. And if it's helpful for you, for me to try to make some more of the activities asynchronous, I can, it's certainly in the realm of possibility. I mean, that's one of the things that's nice about online instruction, is that you can make those kinds of adjustments. I do like having the together time, because that's where I always get tons of questions. And, generally what happens is, say we're looking at Moodle and I'm going through a Moodle activity, you guys will be seeing my screen on your screen and seeing me go through the menus or go through the options and talk about them as we go. And you can always stop me and say, well, what about this? And so I think that is useful. I mean, I can always turn those kinds of things into videos, but then that takes away the option of you not getting something. I mean, you can always stop a video and back up, but if you have a question about something that the video is not covering, or covering in a way that's confusing to you, that does take that possibility away. So I do like the synchronous piece of it, but I can also look to try to maybe organize the nights so that if there's a synchronous piece, we kind of get that done. And if I'm able to then make the remainder of the evening asynchronous, then that would give you the option of either just staying and doing it right then, or if you need to get home and do some other things and then get to it the next day, you can get to it the next day. So I'm certainly willing to keep that in mind as we go. And I can also kind of give a heads up through announcements or something, so you kind of know at least a few days ahead of time as sort of what the rough timing plan will be each week. So you can also plan ahead if you know you've got to tell your kids to stay out of the room for an hour. At this point, my daughter's great because she pretty much locks herself in her own bedroom and just talks to her friends all night. So most nights I don't even know she's there. But so that makes me sound like a bad dad. But so
and
Not to those of us who haven't had a 13-year-old
yeah,
girl.
yeah,
I forget that we get these, because then I was like, oh, okay, so one of the planning things is, okay, if I have the computer that we use, because I didn't want to use our school laptop.
No,
So I was like,
yeah.
okay, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna tie up the computer for 2.5 hours,
Oh,
but like,
you're
Yeah.
not.
but
Yeah.
I'm not, so.
yeah.
And 2 of the
And the-
3 have their own PLDs.
And
anyway, but-
the 2.5 hour thing also that's the outside limit of I mean, honestly, for me, a 2.5 hour class is kind of the outside limit of what I can stay focused for. So I do try to break it up, even through that. But so if we are starting at 5, most nights we may be starting to wrap things up around 7:15, and that's if we need to go the whole time block in terms of that. So we'll still be, I think if we keep it 2:15 to 2.5, as long as nobody goes screaming to the administration saying, I'm not getting my money's worth because it says we're supposed to meet for 2 hours and 45 minutes and we're only meeting. So as long as you don't do that, I think.
Is
we're-
any of it?
I'm pretty sure
this is
we're
a
all-
stupid question, probably, but
There are
all
no
of
stupid
it
questions.
is. I'm not gonna be talking out loud. It's gonna be typing. to
You
ask
can do either.
I mean,
The WebEx interface has a chat bar, and a lot of times if I need just a quick read on everything, I'll say, is everyone good? And everyone just types like, I'm good, something like that.
I won't be I won't be if I'm sitting in my dining room. My wife's not gonna hear like our whole class. It's not out loud. It's typed. Is
No.
You
understand
will
what I'm saying?
No.
you will want to have headphones
Yeah.
to hear
It's
me.
loud.
Oh.
You're like
You will
video
hear
conferencing.
me. Yeah.
Cool.
Make sure
Um,
you put on a little
I-
makeup. Get that
yeah.
little
No,
blush on.
so we'll go into more of this next week. But WebEx, you can video conference through WebEx, like camera video conference. Usually I ask the students not to turn their cameras on because we don't really need that.
Okay, that's good.
And I also generally
But I can be in your
the protocol is that when you log in, your mic will be live, but I ask you to immediately mute your mic.
Okay.
Just because if we've got 10 people whose mics are all open, it's you don't know
They're all
who's
typing, and then
talking,
you hear all that keyboard
clackety
clatter,
clackety, and
just-
it's always
Oh,
out
you've
of
been there,
sync.
huh?
And
You've been
Yeah,
there.
I mean, it's basically like a group phone call.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
okay.
So-
Way back.
Yeah.
But I usually don't even put my video on the screen. What
Yeah.
you will see on the screen will be my screen,
Mhm.
Okay.
and then on the side will be the chat bar.
Okay.
And you can like raise your hand. So
Okay.
that's, if you've got something you need to say, you can raise your hand, and then I'll usually acknowledge. And people will either type, or if you feel like talking, it's easier for you to talk, you just unmute your mic and then you talk, and then everyone hears what you're saying, and then you can mute yourself again. So there's a protocol to having an
Okay, that makes
online
sense.
class.
That makes it
I've never done that.
No,
That's
I've
cool.
never taken an online class, so I don't know.
I taught
It's-
an online course once for VHS, and it was it was much more asynchronous, so it was very weird. And the only classes I've heard of this way is like, I really thought that I'd have to sit there and hope my kids aren't like,
In the background, screaming.
Yeah. Well, and trust me,
"Take the dog out!" I'll be like,
at this point I've heard it all.
Business.
Like somebody goes to ask a question, and then you hear whatever in the background, dishes crashing or whatever, sirens going by. But yeah, so this is good because it helps me kind of also set my own expectations for where we go and how I structure each week. So we'll say 5 o'clock for online meetings. Count on us starting at 5, like at the very least, just to do whatever group piece we have, with the exception of the weeks where I say there's no class, that we know there's asynchronous completely those weeks. And who knows, maybe as I look at a given week, and if I really look at it and go, we really could do this week pretty easily asynchronously, then I will let you guys know that week, and I'll try to do that as soon as possible. And then we will address the March 10th and the April 7th meetings as we get to them, to make sure that, because there will be travel time on those days, that people can get here when they need to get here, and that everyone is good with that. All right. I mean, I guess this is the other thing about the meeting on campus, is because all of you are also in the other class, the on-campus meeting weeks, I did have the thought, and this just turns into a really long night, and 50-50, I don't know whether people would rather drive 2 nights in a row or have one really long night, but we could potentially, on that March 10th and on that April 7th weeks, look at moving the class to Wednesday and running this class, after the other class is finished, or vice versa.
How did that go last time? You did that a few times, right?
it's fun.
I mean, I've done classes where it's 2 back-to-back classes, and it's a
It's a long night.
So
Okay.
it's a long night.
It's
I did it that one
if
time.
we're
the
talking
first
about
day.
moving this class to Wednesdays,
That's true.
Just-
That's actually, if you're not going to be in the Wednesday
Yeah.
class, that would be the one, right?
I hate
Because
to
you
be
won't
the
be.
thorn in everyone's side, but that's not going to work out for the same reason I can't be on campus every Wednesday.
Right. Okay. All right. So,
All right.
I mean, it's only a few times, and the one where we might do it differently would be at May 12th, but we can deal with that again. That's what ended up happening last time was we actually needed one more presentation week than what we had, but I needed to meet with everybody to do final course evaluation stuff and all that. So we moved the final week on the on-campus week. We actually did a couple of presentations here, and the person presenting went into Dr. Abed's office and presented from there so that they weren't in the same room as those of us. It was kind of weird because we're all sitting in here watching the person who's in the next room do their presentation.
Wow.
But we also knew that wasn't going to take the whole night. And again, because the majority of people were in both classes, we kind of dealt with the larger class first, got that done, and then the people stayed who were in the second class, and we wrapped that class up, and we just did it all in one night. But we can, it's still May, that's months away, so we can deal with that when we get there. Okay.
So that April 14th, that's our vacation week. I'm also away and you're away, so.
So that is going to be a week where folks are gone. Okay.
But that one's not, like, we can talk about that later. 'Cause I think
Yeah,
that'll
but
be
no, I
best to
just
do
wanted
about
to
that.
Maybe
throw
you
it
guys
out
just don't do your
because-
presentation on that night. Is there
Yeah, I mean that
presentations?
Moodle presentations. That's just where everyone kind of goes around and just talks about their entire project, and that's sort of a way to put a cap on that particular project. But if I know a bunch of people aren't going to be available that night, I can look at switching some things around. I mean, if people are ready to do their Zoom presentations, we could flip 21st and 14th, and then just make sure that you guys were not doing your Zooms the 14th, but on the 28th instead. So there's some flexibility in there too.
I was going to ask you about the Zoom presentations and trying to get into the first group because I have a commitment on the 28th with like you, I do video production for a Shakespeare
Oh, okay.
for high school kids, and I'm also their sword combat
Nice.
choreographer, and that's our tech week.
Yep.
So I anticipate being able to get online, but it would be great if I could present before, in the first group,
Yeah.
so that I'm not thinking about presenting while I'm.
Yeah, when we get there, I mean, like I said, we will pre-schedule everybody's time slots.
Okay.
So if people know they're not available one week or the other, or they need to go earlier, they need to go later, we'll have time to iron all of that out. So.
We'll make it work.
Okay. So any other things that I can talk about in terms of schedule at this point? I feel like we got pretty in depth on that one. So the only other thing left on the syllabus is these are just standards. If you're not familiar with the ISTE standards, and I know a couple of you are tech teachers, so you should know what they are. But these are for any subject area. Now we have national standards, and these are the technical education, the tech ed standards, both for the student and the teacher, which I kind of like about the ISTE standards is most of the normal instructional standards for subject areas just focus on the student, but these actually have a set of standards for the teachers too. And since you guys are kind of both, you're students in this class, but you're presumably in this program because you are going to be instructional leaders. So I throw those in there. My mom was an English teacher, so there are some typographic things that I do kind of get pet peevey about. And then so again, you got as much information as possible at the beginning. The two main projects, the rubrics that I use are at the end here. Don't get panicked about that. I had a couple people last year who looked at this right away and they started panicking on day one of the class. We will go through all of this, and it's not as bad as it looks and all of that. But again, just in the interest of kind of full disclosure that this is where those two main projects will come down. So, all right, so that is syllabus. So let's now, since I've just did that up here, let me get everybody into Moodle so that you know where to go and how to get there and logging in and all that. Because if you have not used Moodle, the CCSU Moodle at all yet, you will need to do a bit of a first time login, but you should only have to do that once. And then once you're in the system,
I've never logged into the computer.
Do you have a blue, what do they call it? A blue BlueNet account? So to get into the computer, that's what you use, whatever your BlueNet login is.
Do I have time to run to the bathroom?
Yeah, yeah.
How long is it?
Yeah, and actually, we've been going now for an hour and a half. So if anybody needs to take a quick break or something, please feel free to do so. In the past, I tried to schedule breaks, and then I had classes say, "We don't need breaks. Let's just keep going." So I'm like, "Okay, you guys are all adults."
I don't think I've ever used any of the things you said, so it should be interesting. Have you? I haven't.
Which things?
Even the WebEx or the Zoom.
Yeah,
or
so I have
haven't
WebEx
used any.
to work at Eastern,
Oh,
Okay.
you do?
and I
Oh,
also use
'cause
Skype
it-
for Business, and I'm the Blackboard administrator, so I have.
Oh.
I've never
Oh.
used Moodle though, so I'm
Yeah.
anxious to see what it looks like.
Yeah, it's. I've actually never. I've taken classes that use Blackboard. I haven't been on the instructing. Like I haven't
Okay.
used Blackboard as an instructor. So I'd actually be interested in getting some of your
Sure.
feedback too on sort of how they compare. There's a lot of similarities between all of those platforms,
They are,
but they
yeah.
all have their own little quirks and
Yeah.
so on. Our district decided to go Office. We're a Microsoft district.
So
We
for
use-
course management, you're using.
Well, no, we
Teams or
have
SharePoint?
Power School for
Oh,
student management,
okay.
but then we use Teams, Microsoft Teams as our course, and it is not.
It's brand new, and they're promoting it and trying to get people to. But it's very simple, and as a result, it
Freezing.
doesn't have that much in terms of features. Not like a
Right.
developed course management system.
Right, and it was designed for industry, and they've kind of tried to glom onto
Yeah.
it to make
Oh,
it
here's
an
an assignment
educational tool.
Now it's a course management system.
Right, yeah. Oh, and you can do quizzes through forms, but
Yeah.
you
Not
can't
the
do a
same
question
thing.
bank.
There's no
You
grade
can't.
book. There's
Yeah.
It's not the same thing.
So, I have my own thoughts about it all. I will use whatever tools they tell me that I'm supposed to use.
You said it's cold over here.
Yeah, the
We're
window.
we're probably getting a
But
little.
the only thing that's better about Teams and Google is like because you have the touch enabled, like the kids can touch with their stylus, like they can actually go pretty paper free, whereas we have the Chromebooks we have, like in terms of math and applications for it, like there's not like
Yeah.
It's because it's a Chromebook.
it's
right?
because it's a
Right,
Chromebook.
and
Like,
that's-
for like I was not, because I had only had experience with the Chromebook. When they said they were going to it and my kids initially got it, I was like,
Mm.
but now seeing there's a lot of things that are actually really good about it that I'm like, I kind of wish our district would do. I'm sure it's the give and
Yeah.
take, but like
We were all the way to the top, about 75-80% convinced we were going to go Google.
Yeah.
And what started to sway them, honestly, was, well, a lot of the universities are going Microsoft. You know, they're actually moving away from Google and moving away from those other platforms. And the bottom line is that love or hate Microsoft, there's not a job out there right now that you don't have to know how to use Word and PowerPoint and Excel. And they're so established that I think the district looking at it, and Microsoft partnered with the district, so they put up a lot of the money to get the devices into the students' hands. And so it all worked out. But there's pluses and minuses on both sides. But like I said, I'm not going to complain about it because whatever tool they tell me I'm supposed to use, that's the tool I'm going to use because I can't decide not to. So I'll make it work, and that's, you know.
I know.
All
I
right.
was going to ask you, do any of the projects require us to know Photoshop?
No,
Okay.
Oh,
thank
okay.
you.
yeah, it's I mean,
Nobody's taking it.
again, I don't want to.
Oh, do you have?
Well, no, I
We're supposed to have, but
I used
Yeah.
to work in magazines, and I
Oh,
used it
Okay.
all the time.
Oh, did
Yeah,
you?
and you've
For that,
probably
yeah.
got Photoshop
That's
and Illustrator.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, here again, I don't want to get too far ahead, but like when we talk about graphic design, what I'm going to focus on more are some core principles. The actual piece of software you use to create your graphics is kind of up to you. I mean, honestly, I'm at the point now, I mean, I can use Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign and all that. I do most of my graphic stuff just through Word now. I mean, I've got it, it's there. If it can do what I need it to do, then I just go there with it. So, so again, it's not going to be like, okay, well, if you're doing graphics, you have to use Photoshop or you have to use, and we'll talk about a couple of tools, but also I always try to throw out a lot of software is going online now. So you go to a website and you can do your graphics. So I try to make you aware of some of the main sites that are out there. So if you want to do a graphic that you can't do in Word, oh, well, if I go to Draw.io, I can go there and do this for free, sort of a thing. But yes, Photoshop specifically, no. If you know Photoshop and you have Photoshop and you want to do your graphics through Photoshop, be my guest. But yeah, not required.
So,
Okay.
Can I ask you a question? So
Yeah.
does Moodle actually require you to be on a Mac, or
No.
could you be on
Moodle
it's either a Windows machine or
when it all works through a website. So as long as you can
okay.
get to a web browser, and it's pretty stable across no matter what browser you're using. I didn't mean to do this. Most of the times I'm here, I open up Chrome. Tonight, for some reason, I opened up Safari, which I realized then is why it didn't know all my passwords. I was like, oh, did they reset all this? But it's because I was in the wrong browser. But I'm running it through Safari right now. I usually run it through Chrome. I've run it through Firefox. It doesn't, Moodle as a program is not really processor intensive. It's still pretty text-based and it's just formatting text. So as long as you've got an internet connection and can get to your favorite browser, you can get onto Moodle. And you can do everything you need to do in Moodle. So there's no software to download, nothing like that. So, all right. So the place to go is, I'll bring the syllabus back up because it is.
Should we be on our laptop right now? Would that be better?
Either,
Something
honestly,
has to
either.
download.
Nothing has to download.
Okay.
It's on their server and it just needs to know you as
Okay.
your initial login.
Okay.
All right.
It doesn't have to download anything to your computer.
Okay.
So, so to log into the computer is just your BlueNet account name and password. So do you know what those are for you for Central?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so yeah, you're on the laptop. Sorry, your laptop was perfectly being blocked. So all right, sorry, my bad. So for Moodle, it's real easy. It's Moodle, MOODLE. I thought I had this link here. I guess not. .ccsu.edu. You can see it up in the toolbar up here. Yeah, MOODLE .ccsu.edu. My wife jokes all the time about all these weird names that all these tech sites have come up with. She's like, so what are you teaching this week? I'm like, it's Moodle, it's Powtoon, it's Wix, it's whatever it happens to be. So
Because all the one-word domains are taken.
yeah, so they have to
have
come
to
up
make
with
something up that doesn't exist to get a domain name that isn't
Right.
taken already.
and it's memorable.
Yeah.
Why is mine going like this? Because I did the Moodle.ccsu.edu.
Yeah.
Hit that.
Oh, that's oh, you're click on the Wi-Fi icon there. Yeah,
I just did this with Dr. Abed, and I got off one.
maybe it kicked you back.
I'm gonna try it on my laptop after she said that.
Well, it didn't work on her laptop.
It's possible. Oh no, okay, here it goes.
Oops, wrong thing.
Oh, it keeps kicking off BlueNet. I wonder, did he have to like plug in a little dongle on the computer and plug it into an Ethernet cable?
No, he didn't do that. So I can just do it on this, and then I can.
Yeah, I would double.
wait,
Oh,
okay.
there it goes. It went. Okay. Yeah, I know the first time a given user goes on one of these machines, he has to physically plug the computer in for the first login, and then it'll go wireless.
Okay.
So I was just thinking maybe but it looks like
he
it.
did. Yes, he did have me log in.
Okay, so
before.
it caught up finally. Anyway, so Moodle.ccsu.edu And you'll see there's a bunch of courses on campus that use Moodle. They arrange it by department. So if you look at Spring 20, there's near the bottom of the list, Instructional Technology. And within that list, I think there's only 2 active classes currently, and one of them is the EDT 530. So when you click on it, this is where you need to log in, because this is not a closed class, but it is a class that requires you to be a CCSU student. Go to, it'll be near the top, Spring 20, so the S20, go to Instructional Technology. There we go. And EDT 530. So for those of you who have not logged into Moodle, which sounds like it's most of you, you'll need the right-hand option which says create a new account. This does not have to be, yeah, so you'll need to, have you gone onto Moodle before?
No.
Okay, so yeah, you'll
That's
go through this. This login does not have to match up with your central. It doesn't have to be your BlueNet username. It doesn't have to be your CCSU password. This is sort of a completely separate, self-contained system within Central's
So we don't have
ecosystem.
to use the central email address?
No, you do not. Whatever email address you do use will be where you get notifications sent. So it should be an email that you do check every once in a while, because if I send something, or if I post an announcement on the Moodle, you'll get a notification to whatever email address you put in. So yeah, so pick a username, pick a password. If you're somebody that needs to remember these things, jot it down. I don't have any way of accessing these. There is, I think his link is on the main page. Dr. Burkholder is Central's main Moodle guru. So if you have issues, there's an email link to Dr. Burkholder. And my experience is he's very good about getting back to you very quickly if there's issues.
City
But,
or town, just our actual hometown?
Oh, again, it doesn't
Doesn't
really matter. It's not even a required field, so that's kind of up
No,
to
your
what you.
email address has to be a CCSU.
Oh, it does?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I only know that because I just tried it.
Okay, my bad.
That's okay.
So.
I need to start checking that or figuring out how to get there.
Well, that's why I was like, I
Yes.
originally put
Well,
it in there
Exactly,
as-
same.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's.
I think
You,
I know it.
like I
I
said,
didn't bring my stuff today.
if if I
Okay.
post an announcement on the Moodle, then it will generate an email to this email with that announcement. I tend to not use the Moodle announcements. If I've got a quick announcement to make, I tend to do that through Remind, because I just think that one's faster. But yeah, it might be a good idea to have at least one place where you can check your central email. So yeah, so just go ahead and go through this process. If you need to verify through the central, you can go to the just use the webmail portal for central. If you go to ccsu.edu, you can log into webmail.
So how do you check your CCSU email?
The middle one there where it says central email,
Oh, that was easy.
and then it'll be your central email address.
So the announcements you send via Moodle will get copied to central email?
Yes, I think by default, if I post an announcement in the class Moodle, you will get an email. Just I don't know if it actually contains the announcement or if it just says there's an announcement in the class. But like I said, I tend to more likely use
Yes.
Remind for things that I want to make sure that everybody's got information about.
Okay.
But yeah, contact through the Moodle would be to the central email address.
Okay. And then, do we need, are the classes in here? Are we, because we're registered, they're already in here, or do we need?
Well, once you're registered, yeah, because you are a student in this class. So if you go to instructional technology, then and under the S20,
So now,
and then the 5:30
Press enroll
class.
me.
Okay,
Right.
so
and
this
then
is
it
what,
says enroll me?
Yep. Yeah. So once you've completed the login process or setting up your account, then
But I didn't go back to
Oh,
email. You have to go back to your email and
Yeah, you have-
confirm.
yeah,
have
there's
to
a
go back, we have
confirmation.
to get a-
Yeah,
look
Central
at this, and then you just put this in.
within the last year, Central, along with pretty much every educational institution, has gotten a lot more security minded. So they have the two-factor authentication now. That really annoys me because once a week at home, I have to reauthorize all my machines, and it has to send me the code on my phone and then put
Oh,
the
that
code
is
in.
so.
Yeah, Central's is set for 7 days.
I know.
Eastern's is set for 30,
Right here.
so we get a lot more time before we have to do it again.
Oh, you're lucky. I have to do it every 7 days.
Mine is always every 7 days too.
Oh, really?
And then you said then
Are the emails?
Yeah,
me?
at Central?
Oh.
Yeah, it's
I
every
see.
7 days
on
at
the
Central.
top,
Oh,
the
yeah. Oh, I
folder,
thought you
and
said
then
for
see
your-
the
for
line I have.
students.
No, at Eastern.
Oh,
Oh, at
yeah,
Eastern,
Eastern,
yeah.
yeah.
Mail.
So-
I was like, hey,
Mail.
wait, I'm a student, come on. It's
course.
30 days.
All right.
I hate that.
So then the final thing is once you've gone through all the rigmarole of getting your account set up, you go back to the Moodle it's moodle.ccsu.edu, and then you click on instructional technology and then click on 5:30. It will ask you to enroll. You can self-enroll in this. You just click the enroll me button, and you should be looking at something that looks somewhat like what's up on the screen. I'm going to turn editing off so this looks more like what you guys will see. And that is how you know that you have made it. So yeah, so at this point,
Okay, we get in.
what will happen is to get to the Moodle,
Highlight that link and just put it into a new browser. Because
Oh,
it's not
that's
live.
okay.
I knew.
Right, yeah.
Remember you have to
Oh,
push
yeah, the
command.
command. Oh, I'm such a Windows person.
yeah. Is you just need to remember moodle.ccsu.edu. You can bookmark that. And when you click on the class, it will automatically ask you to log in. But now you've got your username and password, and then that'll take you right to the class. So that whole registration thing is a one-time deal. And that'll be good now for any course that you take on campus in Moodle. That's not just about registering for this class, that's just getting into the Moodle system. So now any of these courses, I mean, technically you could go into probably any of the classes and register yourself for them, Gesundheit. I don't know why you would, but you could. If you suddenly had a hankering to go in, I don't know what the other departments are, some biology class or something, see what they're doing. So.
Mhm. I just clicked on it.
All right, so we are going to get into a lot more detail on Moodle next week, but just in terms of kind of what you're looking at, the Moodles have a header section where there's just stuff that's sort of generally parked. There's my email link again, so if you don't remember my email address or don't have it written down, you can always just click on that, and that's a mail to link, so it should open up your email client and start an email to me. And then I just have a space here at the top for things that are just sort of course-wide. The spring syllabus is right there, so if you're ever curious, you can just click on that, and that will open up and let you see the syllabus. I also have a link to the ISTE standards. And this, anytime you see this icon that's sort of the two overlapping chat boxes, that's a forum, and that is a place where any of you in the class, and myself included, can start a chat topic and people can respond to those topics. But that one I park up there for making announcements. So if there's things that I need to get out or want to just have kind of up there for everyone to look at, that's what's there. There are going to be some sidebar things here. I can put up upcoming events, or I can add topics to latest news. this is more likely where I would put things if I want to say like what's the rough schedule for this coming week. I would post that in the latest news by adding a topic there. And again, you will probably get a notification saying something's been posted in the Moodle, or it might even tell you what the topic is. And then it goes down into what they call sections. This class is set up where each section is a week of the class. And not this isn't about trust or anything, but I hide a given week until right before the class starts, only because a lot of times I'm making adjustments to things up until the last minute, and I don't want people to get confused by trying. There are those of you out there, and there's probably some in the room already, who are the people who like to get ahead. And I've discovered in the past that sometimes that gets people into trouble because they are zooming ahead and then something changes and so on. So I will activate or unhide a given week, usually right before class starts. But within each week, the organization is generally about the same, where it starts off with any things that we need for class itself, usually starting with the objectives for the week, and then if there's things that we need to look at or read. If there's specific things related to that week, it might have a separate section, like there's a bunch of links here to some Moodle guides. Directions for WebEx, we'll take a look at that in just a moment because that's going to be important for us. And then I always finish up each week with the homework section, where I will have a page that lays out exactly what is due the following week. And then if there are additional activities as a part of that, for example, next week there is an article to read, and then there's a forum where you will be responding to that article. And then the last thing is always a questions and concerns. And that is a public forum. So if you have a question that's sort of just a general question for the class and doesn't matter to you who sees it, that's a place. I check that once or twice a week to make sure if somebody has a question for the class. But again, you can also always email me if you've got something that you don't want everyone to see. And we will also have Remind as an additional tool too. But that's generally how I organize a given week's worth of stuff. The stuff we need, stuff related to a specific topic, and then finishing up with the homework and so on. And I try to build in as many links as possible. So in the homework listing, for example, where it talks about something, if it talks about a forum, there's a link there that will take you right to the forum so that you can get to what you need to get to from multiple places. So this is our framework. This is what you will be working with too. The main topic next week will be to start letting you see under the hood of Moodle. By next week, your individual Moodles will all be set up. You'll log in the same way. There will be a subcategory under the instructional technology section that will be student Moodles, and each one of you will have your own Moodle there, and you'll be the instructor for that Moodle, so you'll have full administrative access, as will I, and that will be where you start doing your work. But that's mainly the topic for next week, so I'm not going to go into too much of that now. All right, questions so far? I'm doing a lot of talking tonight. That will not be every class. But you all know first classes is always about getting through all the stuff you got to get through. All right, so while we are here, we may as well take care of this next thing, which is Remind. Anybody in here not used Remind? Oh, okay. They went through some changes this past year. So for a brief while, it was not as convenient, but up until recently, it was completely free, and it's a really great way to set up a quick text list. So we would use it at school, for example, if we had a field trip, and like I would usually chaperone the senior field trip. So I'd get a group of 15 students who are my students. I'd set up a quick Remind group. I'd have all the students join it. And then while we were on the field trip, I could just send out a quick text, hey, we've got to meet at the bus in an hour. Or I would tell them, they would have to check in, text me a selfie of you in front of wherever you are right now, And so it was a real quick way to use text as a tool. They moved to a pricing model recently. You can still use it for free, but now they've limited how many students can be in a group and how many groups you can have. But our district now uses it district-wide. We actually, every class in our high school has a Remind group that every student is a member of. The whole school is part of a Remind group. They put the faculty on a Remind group. So that's for, seniors, don't forget, senior panoramic photo tomorrow at 12 or something like that. And we all know students don't check email, but they check their texts 5 times a minute, it seems like. So anyway, so what I do in here sort of for the same purposes is I've set up a Remind. What I did a little differently this time is because so many of you are in both classes, I said it's really kind of silly for me to have 2 separate Remind groups for the 2 classes. So it's just a single Remind group. And when you click on the link, all you've got to do is put in your first and last name. That's how it'll show up in my list. And then the phone number that you will get texted to. And I promise, cross my heart, I'm not going to flood you with texts. This will be, we have to cancel class at the last minute because of something has come up. Or, don't forget that tonight we have to all X, Y, or Z.
Is
So
this the same as the Remind app?
Yeah, I was gonna
Yes,
say, do we need to
so
bring the app, put the app
you
on our
don't
phone?
need the app. Having the app on your phone definitely makes things a little cleaner and easier because you can keep things organized that way. But even if you don't have the app, your phone will still get a text, and it'll just, it'll say you've gotten a text from EDT 520-530. So if you just sign up for this, again, I've found consistently, this is kind of the easiest way, the quickest way for me to know that I can get to everybody, usually last minute, if needed. It came in really handy last year for the other class when we had all the snow cancellations, because there were nights where we didn't know until the last minute whether the university was going to cancel classes or not. And so this was a really good way. And you can also, if you have the app, you can text me directly and I will be the only one. You can text the whole class. Actually, I don't think you guys can. I think only teachers can text whole groups, but you can also use it to text me. So, if you're going to be late to a class or have to miss a class at the last minute, you can email me and I will get the email. But if you send it through Remind, I will get a notification right on my watch because this gets Remind on it. And so that'll be a real quick way for me to know that it's there.
So do you want us to be a student?
Yes, yeah. I mean, honestly, that sounds like you get to decide what you are. It's just a label.
Okay.
Calling yourself a teacher doesn't mean that you get teacher access to the list.
Well, Allie's going
So-
on the Quebec trip.
Oh yeah.
So we have to do the Remind for that, and so I just didn't know if I mess it up.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
I'm in her.
Oh,
right?
So is she in 8th grade?
She's in 7th.
Oh,
7th
okay.
grade.
My-
So yeah, this is the.
Because my daughter's going on a Quebec trip too.
Oh yay! So that's where I'm supposed to be tomorrow night, signing my life away. But
Oh,
I'll
that's
be with
right.
you.
That meeting is.
So
Yeah. So this is, if you have the Remind app,
okay.
you'll be getting things from both of those. All right. So that's another tool for us to use. All right.
What did you say the class code was?
What is your birthday?
Oh, for this one, the class code for this is A4HKHK, all lowercase. Yeah, if you want to use Remind on your own, what it does is each class you create gets a code, and a student can actually join a class with their phone simply by texting that code to, I think Remind's number is 81010 or something like that. So as the phone number, if they put in 81010 and then they text that at A4HKHK, they join the class. So that's
So do we need to have that?
We
written
you
down?
don't.
Okay.
Because I gave you the link,
Okay.
you went there directly. But the other way, just if you want to use Remind on your own, that code that it generates that allows somebody to join the class without the app, without a link. They just text that to that, and then you get a notification at the other end that it's there, that they're there. Okay, yeah, I feel like I'm going faster than I normally do. We have a problem if we finish early tonight. I've never had a student say, no, that's not true. I think I had one student once. I had a case last semester where there were a couple of days where we did finish up early, and I said, but I've said that I'm here, so I will stay as long as people need me to stay. They were working on projects and so on. So of course I always had one student that stayed all the way to the bitter end, which was fine. I'm not complaining, but there are those moments, yeah, you're like, I'm giving you a chance to go home early, but they wanted to get work done, so I applauded them for that. So, all right. So yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of feel like we can kind of start to wrap some things up because I really just want to talk about what's due next. Oh, actually, no, what I should talk about is WebEx. That's the next thing is WebEx. So, so we're not going to do this right now because honestly, you logging onto WebEx from these computers isn't going to really gain you anything because the little piece of software that needs to download would need to download to the computer that you're actually going to be on when you're joining the class. So I'm just, the instructions are all here. So, and next week I will definitely give us some extra time to get people logged on that first time and so on. So this page is in our Moodle, Directions for WebEx. You can, anytime between now and next week, you can log in here. You'll just get a notice saying that the room is not open or that's not available, but you'll be logged in. You can either click on this link right here to get to my WebEx classroom, or what I do is the shortcut is this EDT 530 at the top of our Moodle. This graphic right here will take you right to WebEx as well. So I kind of hide that link there just because that's usually faster than, and you can also bookmark it once you've been there if you like to bookmark things. So that's step one, is just to get to that page. Name and email address. This does not have to be central. Anybody could log into my WebEx classroom as long as they had the link to get there. So the name, it doesn't have to be a formal name. If you like to go by a shortened version of your name, just put that in. That'll just be how you're known during that class. It's not, you're not even signing up for an account, right? I'm the one with the account. All you're doing is joining my classroom. So the name and email address are just so that when I'm teaching the class, I see who's in the room and I can distribute stuff, and it'll distribute stuff through the email addresses that are given. So you just have to enter that when prompted. Click join. It will, if it's your first time, it should automatically go through the process of downloading the client. WebEx will work through a web browser. You do not need the client, but there are some features that will not work if you're going through the web browser and not through the client.
What's the client?
It's just a little piece of software that it puts on your computer,
That's the one
so
you're
that
talking
whenever WebEx launches,
Okay.
it launches it through that client, so that it's WebEx's own interface, so that they have more control over what it looks like and how it functions. So if you want all the features of WebEx, that's the best way to go. But you only have to do that the first time you go in, and then once you're in. And then every time after that you go into the class, it will automatically
And we're
launch
not doing
that.
this till next week.
Right,
Okay.
yeah. So you're there. As you're going in, it will ask you how you want to connect audio. You can actually phone in, literally use your telephone to phone into a class. If you don't have a microphone on your computer, or you don't have a computer and you just want to listen in on a class, you can actually do it just through a phone. But you would do call using computer, and then that'll use the built-in microphone on your computer when you want to do it. And you can check your audio, and it gives you a little feedback where you can talk and you can see the thing going up and down. So when you're connected, there'll be a little green check mark and it'll say you're connected to audio. If I am there and I try to log in, I try to get the room active at least 15 minutes before our scheduled start time. So even if you just want to log in and then just walk away, just so you know you're logged in and you're good to go. So if I'm logged in, you should see my desktop, and what you will generally see, what I try to park on the screen, is that the overview for the night. So you'll kind of, just like you saw when you came in here tonight, you'll see what we're working on that particular night. It'll say you'll hear my voice. You probably won't hear my voice until right before the class starts, because I leave my mic muted too, because if I'm home, I'm in my recording studio. So I'm usually like banging on the drums or playing guitar or something like that. And you don't necessarily need to hear me doing that. So if I'm there, you're good to go. If not, you'll see a notice that the meeting hasn't started yet. But you can just leave it. When the meeting actually begins, it'll jump you right into it. So whenever you're there. When you enter the classroom, there's two windows that you want to open. Unfortunately, unless this has changed, WebEx doesn't sort of remember your window preferences. So you will have to open these each time. One of them is participants. And this will just be right at, I think, it's either at the top. I think in the client, they're right across the top of the screen. But look for something that says participants. That just brings up a list that just shows all the people who are in the room. And that is also where, like, if you need to raise your hand, like you go next to your name, or if you need to mute or unmute your microphone, that's where the little icons are for that. So it's useful to have that window open so you can see who's in the class, and you can also do those interactive things. And you also want to bring up that chat window. Generally, as I said earlier, chat is for if I've just posed a general question or I need to just make sure everybody's ready to move on or whatever. There's also a thumbs up. So sometimes I'll say, okay, everyone give me a thumbs up if we're ready to go on. Or if I've sent you off to read something, I'll say, when you come back, say you're good to go or give me a thumbs up. So I just know we're ready to go on. So in addition to the main window where you'll see my computer screen, those two windows you're going to want to have open. As I said earlier, it defaults when you log in to having your microphone on. So usually the first thing is to click that microphone mute button. And that'll be, obviously, it looks like a little microphone. You click on it, it'll put the line through it. Don't be offended if you log in and forget to do that and then notice that I've muted you. I'm not being rude. Sometimes I'll notice that somebody logged in and they just forgot, and I can mute and unmute you as well since I'm in charge of it. So, and that's just protocol. I've done some online classes where they don't have people mute their mics, but it's hard enough when you're with the people in the room and people are talking at the same time. When everybody's coming through the same pair of headphones at the same time, it's too much. So you mute yourself, and raise your hand if you want to speak. And again, that's just a little icon. It's a little thing you can click on. And if I see somebody with a raised hand, again, the protocol is generally I keep those windows open too. So if I see a hand go up, I will acknowledge whoever it is that raised their hand. I'll say something like, "Oh, so-and-so, you have a question, or you need to say something." And you can either then unmute if you want to talk, or if you just want to type, you can type.
So everybody can see those or hear those?
If you are talking, everyone in the class will hear you talk. You can generally, when you're chatting, the general chat is to everybody in the room. You do have the ability to click on a person, or I think there's a pull down menu or something at the chat where if you just want to chat with a single person, you can set up a private chat. And I can do that as well from my end. But again, generally in a class, especially when it's this online environment, it's a little weird to have a private chat going on, because then the whole rest of the class is kind of sitting there in silence, not knowing what's going on. And so a lot of times what will happen, whenever we get done with a class, I always will stay online until the last person logs out. So if you have a question or something you want to talk to me about, you can always wait till the session's done and just wait for everyone else to leave if you want to talk to me or chat with me that way too. So, but that's the basic thing. So, you know, over the course of this week, just so that you know you've kind of dealt with the technical side, whatever machine you think you're going to be using, or if you think you're going to be on multiple machines, you can set it up on both of them, is just to go to the classroom, go through that first login process. It'll download the client, just make sure that that all runs smoothly. And that you get to that screen saying, you know, the room's not available. If you've gotten that far, then you know you'll be good next week when you log in. Probably. Anything online, there's no guarantees. There's always somebody gets kicked off because their internet connection goes down or something's running slow. But at least you know you've gotten your computer to the point where it thinks it's ready to go online. All right. So questions on that process? Again, this page is here for you to refer to if you need to refer to it. So that'll be next week at 5 o'clock. That's where you will go, is just to click on there and get logged in. All right. So let's talk. So aside from doing that, I don't want to pile stuff on the first week, but I do want to get us thinking about a couple of things. So there is an article that I've uploaded here from the Journal of Educational Technology Systems from 2017, and it's on the longer side, but it's also one of those dry sort of technical articles. It's a survey of a bunch of studies that were done. I'm not so interested in this opening stuff. Any of you who have been involved with research, the first several paragraphs or sections of a paper like this are only interesting if you also do the same research. So they talk about their methods, and they talk about their formulations, and they talk about their data collection. What I'm really interested in, the reason this article is here, is starts at the results section. So what this was trying to do was to look at a whole bunch of research related to issues that arise when you have online instruction. And having reviewed it, they broke it down into three sort of main ideas, main sections. One of them was issues related to learners. So these are things that are barriers from the learner's perspective when they are put into a situation where they're having to learn through an online resource. So they talk about several issues related to learners, and they kind of review the information there. Then they talk about content, issues related to content. And this is a lot about what we're going to be in here, is developing content for online. So there's a similar section that goes through and reviews the research about issues that have come up with online content and getting in the way of learning. And then the final section focuses on the instructor, issues related to instructors. And again, goes through the same thing. So as a kind of a, let's just dive in and get some ideas out there for this course, this is sort of a good way I've found to just kind of open yourself up to all of the challenges. And we know that they're there. This is a world that, you know, distance learning as a whole has been around actually for quite a while. I mean, going back to the original correspondence courses where it was literally through mail, all the way up to today. But obviously, you know, the last, say, decade has really seen an explosion in the use of online instruction. And I think in some ways the cart has gone before the horse, that we've started doing all this without sort of addressing the issues that it presents first, right? Let's throw a bunch of computers in your classroom. Your students are going to become better students, right? Let's figure out why we want to use technology in the classroom first, and then find the technology that actually helps solve the problems you have. And if you don't have a problem, don't solve it. So that's what this is about. So yes, it's kind of lengthy, and it's a little on the dry side because it is a research article. But I think it does a good job of kind of breaking down and trying to summarize the big ideas of, here are issues that students have, here are issues that instructors have, and here are issues with the content that connects the two with each other. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to, if possible, read the whole article, but rather than making everybody responsible for kind of digesting the entire article, is to divide up and have each of you just look at one of the three areas. And the purpose of the forum is going to be for you to create a forum post that just kind of addresses the one area that you've been given. And this will be a way for other people who maybe didn't spend as much time on the area you did to get a quick overview and to get your thoughts on what you took away from the area that you did focus on. So the post that you create, and you just do that by clicking add a new discussion topic, and you add it in. Summarize your given section. Put the name of your subject in the heading so that quickly people can see, oh, this one was the learners, this one was content, this was instructors. It'll automatically put your name on the post, so you don't have to put your name on the post. Just give the name of the subject area. So quick summary, what were the main ideas? And then I want you to kind of try to personalize it. If you've had experience that relates to something that you read in your section, something you can contribute from your own experience, you can feel free to talk about that. Do you have any suggestions already for ways to maybe address some of these problems that the article brings up? So that's your piece of it, is just to summarize the 1/3 of the article that you will have to focus on. And then this is where it gets into the learning how to use these tools in a way that promotes learning, is you're not done when you've posted your post. I hate putting a number on these things, but I find if I don't, then people don't post anything. So I do say, oh, there's a typo there. It says rely thoughtfully. That should be reply. Thoughtfully to at least 2 of your classmates' postings. And that doesn't mean just stop at 2. I do say try to select postings that are from the areas that you didn't, if possible. But if you see somebody that did your area say something different than what you said, then absolutely join in on the conversation. But that's what these forums should be, is a conversation. It's not a, here's my thought, and a bunch of people say, great thought, and that's the end of it, right? This should be the way that these forums can get past that non-useful instructional way, and that we can make the connections, is if the conversation keeps going. So yes, they are due next week, but sort of on both sides of that, I don't close the forum after next week. So these discussions can keep going. If there's something interesting going on between you and some other people, and you want to keep the conversation going, keep it going. But it also means to try not to wait until 4:30 next Tuesday to put your post in. I mean, that's okay for you, but then it kind of doesn't give other people a chance to learn from what you found and to respond to it and to get those conversations going. So again, I'm not going to put days on it or times on it or numbers of posts you have to do on it, but the core idea is the conversation, right? Make them meaningful conversations. So you don't have to reply to every post you read, but if something you read sparks an idea, sparks a thought, sparks a comment, throw it in there. You know, even if it's just a couple of sentences. I don't look for paragraphs on each of these. And then it is kind of also on you to come back to your post a couple of times through the week and see if people responded. And if they did, and you see something you can say back to them, then keep the conversation going. If you happen to notice, and this always happens too, like you get the first couple of posts get 5, 6, 7, 10 responses. And then by the time you get to the last couple, there's like 1. And then you feel bad, the 0. That's always the saddest, is the 0 reply post. I don't want to see any zero reply posts. So if you happen to go in and you notice that there's a post that has had no responses yet, maybe try to throw something into that conversation. So it's about the material, and I want to see what you think about it, and I want to get our thoughts going on this. But in that meta sort of a way, this is also a way for you to learn how to use the forum tool in maybe a way that's a little more instructionally beneficial than just the typical put in your thing, reply to 2 others, you're done, check mark, move on. And that'll be true of all of these. So it's about building good habits, right? You get into the habit of using this as a conversation tool. So that's really the whole homework for next week is just to read your section of the article and do these posts and conversations. So that begs the question, which section? So we've got 6 people in here right now, plus a possible 7th, but I'll deal with Marcus on it. So obviously with 3 sections, that means 2 people per section. Anybody want, without really knowing what they cover, anybody have a particular interest in grabbing one of those 3 areas, the teacher, the learner, the content? All right. Why don't we go, I guess it goes learner, then content, and instructor, and learner, content, instructor. All right. And by all means, if you want to scan through the whole article, it is a bit lengthy. Feel free to do so, but this also helps to kind of divide up the heavy lifting so that you really only have to focus hard on one section of it. So you're already in Moodle, so we've got that taken care of. You're in Remind, we got that taken care of. You know how to get to WebEx. I didn't put that as homework, but some point over the week, just check that you can get into the WebEx interface and that a computer's set up to go. And the other thing, some years I've had people do this in class, but I'm not going to have this do it in class. There is the one other thing in there is I do have a quick survey it's a Google form just for me to gather some information from each of you about your background, about some interests you might have, if there's particular things that you might want to cover in the class, sort of how you rate yourself as a technology person, just so I've got some things that I can look at and try to do some personalization and customization as we go forward. All right, so that's all of it for next week. Is that manageable? I'm not overloading anybody too much.
So when we signed up for Moodle, it sent us an email saying, if you're not done so already, you should edit your profile page. So we go over that next week.
If you want to, you honestly don't have to.
Okay.
That's just Moodle wanting to make it as personal as possible.
Okay.
But since if you were doing a class where you never met your students in person, that would be useful, because then a teacher could look at those profile pages and get a bit more of an idea of where you're from and who you are and stuff like that. But
You're doing it through the survey.
I get, what's that?
You're doing
I've got the survey. I'm seeing you guys in person. If you want to add that stuff in. I mean, some people put in an image so that their little screenshot shows up when they're with their account. But no, you do not. You're not required to do that. That's a suggestion.
I finally figured out where it was, because I was going to say, can you just tell me where to go? But then I randomly clicked on something and found it.
Oh, there we go. All right. So just to summarize, 5 o'clock is our meeting time. I will try to compress our synchronous time to try to free up some more asynchronous time to help people out on that front. We will address the on-campus meetings as we get to them to try to find times that are beneficial for everyone. And as always, and I do recognize that many of you are taking 2 classes or 4 classes, please let me know if you're starting to feel overwhelmed, because like I said, a lot of this, it will be front-loaded. I will prepare you for that it's going to feel initially like there is a lot going on these first several weeks. But realize that there's decompression time on the other side of that we can always flow into. If we need to push things back, if I need to extend deadlines, just let me know. If you learn one thing about me, it's that I'm very easy when it comes to that kind of stuff because, again, I've been there. This spring's a little better for me, but last spring when I was teaching these 2 classes, I was also taking 2 classes on campus that met weekly, in addition to doing my full-time job and running the auditorium. So I do know what it's like, and I try to be as helpful as possible when it comes to all of that. So, all right, so I think that's kind of all I got for us tonight. So there we go. We're like 15 minutes ahead of
Nice.
our published time. So feel free to head out. Just with the, I mean, I think most of you have been in these labs, but the general lab rules are just when you're done, just log out. Don't shut the computers down because they do updates and all that. Just log them out. If you've shuffled things out of the way to make room for a laptop or something, just kind of straighten the station up, tuck your chair back in, you know, leave it in the condition you found it or better. And I will either see people tomorrow night. We are in the other lab tomorrow night. So we're down the hall. When you come to the bottom of the stairs, go left through the doors instead of right. And we're the first door on the right. We'll be down there tomorrow night for gaming and gamification. And I will see you.